By now, you should have a basic understanding of how Adobe Premiere Pro thinks and works. Let's go ahead and create a new project, a new sequence, and set it up to edit. So as we saw in an earlier video, to create a new project, I can double-click on New Project. We see the same dialog box that we saw before. Let's go ahead and we'll give it the name New Project. Now, I wouldn't normally name your show New Project because you'll always have then a new project and a newest project, and it's kind of like scripts. You have your final, real final, and then real final 2.0. So just go ahead, give it a name just so you can practice. And remember, you want to select the location where it's going to reside or where it's going to end up. Now, we created a folder on our desktop for projects. If you haven't done this, the default location would have been in your Documents folder. So I like where it's going. Everything is fine. I'm going to hit OK just as we did before. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. If you've used previous versions of Premiere Pro or some other editing systems, a lot of times when you create a project, it will always create a single sequence to get you started. Premiere Pro now will open up the project file, and then you create the sequence that you need. Now, just like we learned in an earlier video, there's lots of ways to do everything, and there's lots of ways to create a new sequence. One of the ways is simply going to the File menu, going up under New, and choosing Sequence. And as you can see, you can do this with the keyboard shortcut also. There are other ways to create a new sequence, and you'll learn those as we go through the rest of the course. Now, this window may be a little bit daunting at first, and if you're a little bit afraid of it, you can actually hit Cancel. And you're thinking, well, why did I just go through this step? Well, I wanted you to see this screen, and a lot of times you know exactly the format that the timeline needs to be, such as, is it standard definition, such as DV or DV widescreen? Or maybe it's a high definition flavor, such as DVC Pro HD, or maybe a flavor of XDCAM. If you already know what format it needs to be, you can go ahead and select whichever format you're going to want to edit in and say OK. But suppose you don't know the exact flavor of video that you'll be using. This is where it gets really nice. I can simply hit Cancel, and then once I bring in a piece of video, I can use that piece of video and say make a sequence based on the size of the video, the frame rate, and even the codec. I'll talk about importing media in a later video, but for now, let me go ahead and bring in one single clip. I'm going to do this by right-clicking and selecting Import, and then I get a dialog box. Now, I'm already inside the folder that's on my desktop. If you're in a different location, go ahead and click on Desktop to navigate to this level. Click on Exercise Files to open that up. And inside there's a folder called Media. The exercise files have two additional folders in the Media folder that we will use later. But for now, it's okay just to focus on the Chapter 1 Media folder. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Camera 1 Wide Shot because the bulk of my footage uses this frame size and codec. Simply double-click on it or select it and press the Import, and it will now appear in your project pane. This is where it gets really fun. I simply want to make a sequence that matches this footage. Let me go ahead and double-click it so you can see the shot. So there it is, and I have no timeline in the lower right-hand corner, as evidenced by the fact that Adobe is actually telling me, timeline, no sequences. So now I want to take this clip. I can right-click on it and go to the drop-down menu and create a new sequence from the clip, or I can simply grab any clip that I want and drop it on this little piece of paper down here, and it will automatically create a brand new sequence based upon frame size, frame rates, and codecs. And now I don't have to worry that my footage doesn't match my sequence. You'll also notice that it has named the sequence after the shot. So you may want to go back in and change it to whatever the shot was called, to whatever you want to call your sequence. For simplicity's sake, I will call this timeline. Now you'll notice there is a yellow line directly above the clip. If you're coming from other editing software, you might think that this is a warning that there's a sequence mismatch. In the case of Premiere Pro, this is not a danger sign. The yellow line is saying that it's going to have to do some processing on the fly, but you still will have real-time playback with no dropped frames. If you're on a faster system, or using video that is less compressed than the video that I'm using, you may not see a yellow line at all. And finally, if you want to confirm what the settings are for your sequence, you can go up to the drop-down menus on top, click on Sequence, and select Settings. Now, you'll notice this is grayed out. And this will probably happen to you a lot, and you'll go, why is it grayed out? Something must be broken. Nothing is broken. You need to make sure that you select the sequence first, because you could have multiple sequences available, each with its own settings. So I'm going to select my sequence, and now when I go to the drop-down menu, Sequence Settings is not grayed out. I can click on it, and I can see all the parameters of this sequence based upon my original footage. And now I'll click OK to close the window. As you see, you can create a sequence to specific parameters, or you can just base the sequence on any clip in your project file. Now keep in mind that it's only the first clip that you drop in that will allow you to match the sequence to that clip's settings. All subsequent clips will not affect the sequence settings. As a matter of fact, they'll automatically conform to whatever settings are there. Now, an important rule of thumb is that first clip should be primarily the format that you want to work in. So, for instance, if you have one old standard definition clip that you may want to start your show with, and you drop that in first, your entire timeline is going to be standard def. So, if you know you're going to be using a lot of high-def footage, make sure the first clip that you drop in the sequence is representative of all your footage, and you can always delete that later if you want to start your show with an old standard def shot.